Today we're going to study part 10 in your textbook on rock, and we'll also have our student report on the Beatles. Look in your book on page 511 through 525, and you will read about rock. We'll talk about rock styles, rock in American society, and we'll have our student report on the Beatles. One of the earliest important rock and roll groups was Bill Haley and his Comets, whose Rock Around the Clock is often identified as the first big hit in the new style. So, you will notice, as I was talking about earlier, often we know who the performer is now, but we don't often know who wrote the song. There's a lot of songwriters out there who are writing music, but they may not have performance appeal, or their voice may not be one that it is going to sell 1 million records. And so then you have the performers who may not be great songwriters. And so this piece, Rock Around the Clock, which is just an iconic rock and roll song, was composed by two guys named Friedman and Myers. Who's ever heard of them? Who is that? But we've all heard of Bill Haley and his Comets. And so often the performer is really well known, whereas the composer is not. Whereas in the past, we know it's a Bach piece, or a Beethoven piece, or a Mozart piece, or a Brahms piece, or a Wagner piece. Now we know, oh, this was one that was done by Bill Haley and his Comets. Not, this is one that was written by Friedman and Myers. So, this is a rhythm and blues song of the 1950s, has a powerful beat, and used a lot more saxophone and electric guitar. These are the new things that are being added into this new rock and roll style. Of course, being from Memphis, I have to bring up Elvis Presley, who was labeled as the king of rock and roll. And he is very famous for his song Jailhouse Rock. By who? Leiber and Stoller? Who are they? We don't know Jailhouse Rock as a song by Leiber and Stoller. We know Jailhouse Rock is a piece sung by Elvis Presley, and in his movie that he was in, because Elvis Presley was in a lot of movies. And so this was from the Jailhouse Rock movie. So click on the link, the YouTube link, and watch this Jailhouse Rock by Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. Let's look at the characteristics of rock. Usually there is a singer who often plays an instrument, along with two electric guitar players, electric bass, percussion, and electric keyboard. That makes up the rock group. It has a very powerful beat and is usually in 4/4 time. So you're going to have the drummer going and keeping a strong beat of 4/4 time. Rarely is it going to be in 3/4. The form is usually strophic, which means you have a verse, refrain, and that just continues over. Strophic is also similar to the way hymns are. Verse, refrain, verse, refrain. So that's what the rock and roll style is in. The chorus or refrain typically has a hook line that is repeated lyric and melody that becomes the most memorable part of the song. For example, the Beatles. We all live in the yellow submarine, the yellow submarine, the yellow submarine. We all live in the yellow submarine. And that gets stuck in your head because that is the hook line that everyone's going to remember. You have the Elton John, so goodbye yellow brick road. And it goes, every time you have this new chorus, you have, so goodbye yellow brick road. And that is the little hook line that we all remember. You have the song Lean on Me, when you're not strong. All right, and that lean on me is the part that you're going to remember. That's the little hook line. Or even from earlier rock and roll girls group, my boyfriend's back and you're gonna be in trouble. That is the little hook line, and that part of the song comes back in over and over, and that is what is going to sell this song to the public, because they may not remember any of the other words in the song, but everyone can join in on, when it comes around, my boyfriend's back and you're gonna be in trouble, and they're going to sing along with that. And that's what they like, is to feel like they can be a part of this rock group, singing in their car or singing with their friends or buddies as they listen to their popular songs that they like to sing. In fact, just kind of an interesting side note, my family and I, when we travel, we like to go to the Hard Rock cafes. And we were in London at the Hard Rock Cafe listening to a Beatles song, Hey Jude. And everyone was just sitting there eating their dinner. And when we got around to na, 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 everyone in the whole restaurant started singing along, because these are the little hook areas that hook the people in to make them feel like they can sing along or be a part of the song. Speaking of the na 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 from Hey Jude of the Beatles, rock music also often had a lot of nonsense syllables. So I have two examples here for you to listen to. One is the Louie Louie, performed by the Kingsmen. You have the Louie Louie, oh baby, and you can't even understand most of his words, but you have a lot of yeah, 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 yeah. All right, so you've got this yeah, 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 yeah. They're not really meaning a whole lot. They're just these little nonsense symbols. And this Hey Jude at the end, you have a na, 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 na. That actually starts 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the song. If you want to hear the whole song, feel free. But if you want to just skip ahead to see how these nonsense syllables are used, skip ahead to 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the song. And you'll hear an example of these just nonsense syllables. They're not really meant to move the music forward with any kind of storyline. They're just fun nonsense syllables. The harmonic progressions of rock music are usually quite simple, and they often consist of just 3 or 4 basic chords. Your 1, 4, and 5, maybe a 5, 7 thrown in there every so often, some kind of a minor chord, maybe a minor 6 instead of a 1, be interchanged with that. But often they were just boiled down to 2 chords. And if you listen to this song, Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles, you'll hear that it's based solely on 5 and 1, 5 and 1, 5 and 1. So the whole thing is built on only 2 chords, very simple in its chord structure, but yet the song itself is quite complex with its lyrics and with its melody. So what contributed to this rise in popularity of rock music? It was primarily the baby boom after World War II. There were more teenagers in the 1950s and 1960s than ever before. Also, you have a rising economy after the wars are over with. That meant that people had more money to spend on non-essentials like music. You think about it, people have to buy food, clothing, shelter, but things like music are luxuries. And when you have extra money and you don't have to use all of your money on the essentials, you have more money for music. Also, these new instruments of electric guitars and records and record players and radios, everyone wanted one. And so the sales of these things just skyrocketed. Everyone had a little extra money and they were learning how to play guitar and playing their records. And radios were offering, basically free music. And so everyone was buying a radio to be able to listen to music. And a single concert could gross hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so these rock stars were just bringing in loads of money, and the audience was often a lot of just screaming girls who just thought this was just the end of all, to be able to see these rock singers performing, and they would, spend their extra money to go to these concerts. You add some tight-fitting pants, some sequins, some leather jackets, and a strobe light, and the crowd goes wild. Everyone they just are experiencing this multimedia event, and you've got visuals, you've got sound effects, you've got all kinds of entertainment value, and everyone is just having a great time. Other acts would not only stop at what we talked a minute ago with sequins and leather jackets and strobe lights, they added pyromaniacs with flames and smoke and explosions and wild costumes and makeup. And some radio stations began to carry only rock and roll music. And so as more and more people were listening to that station, they would get more and more advertisers, and those stations became very popular and very wealthy. And so it was just a craze after World War II brought on by the baby boomers who were just so numerous at that time. Here are two examples as you watch these YouTube clips of costumes, glitter, sequins, explosions. You've got Elton John performing with the Muppets, his song Crocodile Rock, and he is dressed up to the hilt, and he's looking like a crocodile, but he's got all these crazy costumes on. He was known for his huge, crazy glasses, and so that's kind of what was part of his style, part of the slogan of what would be Elton John was that, oh, he's the guy with the crazy glasses and the crazy costumes. And then another song by the group Kiss called Beth, and you will see they would wear this wild and crazy makeup, and they would, it would almost look like clown makeup, but it was like a scary clown makeup, and the huge hairdos and sticking their tongues out. And and they would have these explosions going on in the background with pyromaniacs. And so this was a big draw to people and had entertainment value to these baby boomers and to the young teenagers of the day. I remember being a music student in the early 1980s, like 1983, 1984, and I was at Baylor University. And they were telling us one day how that MTV was the new wave of the future for music. And they showed us a video of Putting on the Ritz, which was created for MTV. And I remember talking to one of my friends going, this'll never fly. No one's going to want to watch just concerts, or performances of people singing. They're going to listen to people sing, but I don't see them ever taking off. No one's going to just watch people singing, performing. Well, was I ever wrong? Because MTV just exploded on the entertainment field, and it creates a visual enjoyment of going to a concert, perhaps, or even more than going to a concert, because they can add all kinds of props and they can add all kinds of special effects and scenery and scene changes. And so this is a piece where you're including the music and the dancing and all of the scenery and variety of settings. And of course, I can't leave out another great Memphian that's a great musician, Justin Timberlake. And this is his piece, Can't Stop That Feeling. On page 520, you'll read about how that rock music inspired a number of new easy dance steps. They weren't like some of the fancy ballroom dance steps where you had to learn intricate, difficult to remember steps. They were easy steps like the twist, the monkey, the mashed potato, the sprinkler, so everyone could follow along without a lot of difficulty. And more recently, there's been a lot of line dancing. And one of the most popular ones at this time is the cha-cha slide. So let's watch this one and see how music and dancing were fused together in rock music. We will now have our student report on the group called the Beatles. Here are my Beatles tidbits in case they weren't covered in the student report. This is an English rock band made up of Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. They were very popular in the 1960s, and in 1964 they led the British invasion of the United States pop music market, and they helped introduce this new rock and roll style to the world. They were the best-selling band in history, selling over 800 million albums. Unfortunately, John Lennon was shot and killed by a member of one of their fan clubs, but Paul McCartney was able to move forward as a solo artist, and he was knighted for his service to music, so he is actually Sir Paul McCartney, and he is still performing concerts. Now let's listen to one of the pieces that were performed by the Beatles when they were at the kind of beginning their career. The song is I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was performed live on the Ed Sullivan Show. And for 23 years, between 1948 and 1971, Ed Sullivan hosted one of the most popular variety shows in the United States. And on his show, he introduced many new bands and performers to the public, including the Beatles, Elvis Presley, the Rolling Stones, the Jackson 5, and Richard Pryor. So this is, click on this YouTube link, and you can see the Beatles performing I Want to Hold Your Hand on the Ed Sullivan Show. Our next session will actually be Exam 5. So here is our exam or test review. There will be 14 terms to match with their definitions. So study those important terms and featured styles that you find at the end of each chapter, which will be on page 492, 506, and 524. I want to know how the baby boomers affected the musical economy of the United States. And how does music create a specific mood in a movie or in a musical? Describe a prepared piano. What does that look like? What happens with that? And be able to match important information to the following composers or performers. We have Bessie Smith, the Beatles, Elvis Presley, Scott Joplin, John Cage, John Williams, and Leonard Bernstein. So know the important information about these composers. We didn't study a lot about these composers, but we have some real important tidbits that you need to know about these composers. And so be sure to match, you can match those up. All right, good luck on the test. Be sure to read in your textbook, Part 10, the chapter on rock in your textbook, which is page 511 through 524, and read about how rock music has really affected and changed American society and all the different styles of rock. And we'll be having our exam, our 5th exam, after the Thanksgiving break.